prize money was the most this century. Betting was intense, and Country Daisy was installed as the 6-to-1 favourite. Glatton General was 10-to-1 with Crafty Drive On, 12-to-1 1-to-7, 16-to-1 Fantasy World and React Swank, 20-to-1 My Bonnie Prince, Curramore Lap, 65, High Wind, Timworth Tom, Cronin's Figure and Bristol Duffer. The 200-to-1 outsiders were Kazan's B.I., Cassiopeia, Secure Peter and Sea Holly. Conditions were perfect and public interest had never been greater. Five coaches came over from Ireland.
7 afield, 10 bar. Winner each way. 10 bar, winner each way. On the Waterloo.
By 9:30 the beaters were clearing the field.
Conditions here are absolutely perfect on the Withens for the start of the 1987 Bernard Barry Waterloo Cup. Although there was heavy rain at the beginning of the weekend, since then there's been a strong wind and the ground has dried out and is absolutely perfect. Country Daisy, the bitch from Ireland, is now 6-to-1 hot favourite to win this year's Waterloo. But at only £52, she carries a disadvantage on the long run-ups up the Withens. Crafty Drive On, another Irish bitch, in this case a puppy, also appears to have an outstanding chance. The main English hopes are Glatton General and 1-to-7. Glatton General was a brilliant winner here of the Altcar 1000 in November, and 1-to-7 looked outstanding in the Champions Stakes before losing very unluckily in a most unsatisfactory final. And they're already away. Milton Emu is leading West End 2 lengths.
West End on the red collar had been semi-finalist in the Sefton, but he was led 2 lengths by Milton Emu on the white collar for the first course of the day. The first course came up the field at 9:40, the earliest for many years. Next in slips was Spring Jupiter on the red collar, who got in the last 8 of the Waterloo Cup as a puppy, and he met Local Suitor on the white, who run up at Brinny Piss a fortnight before. Local Suitor on the white collar led by 2 lengths. And in a course of similar duration to the previous, 30 seconds, Local Suitor was an easy winner. Next in slips was to be the 10-to-1 second favourite Glatton General. He was on the white collar. He met a 200-to-1 outsider in Kazan's B.I. on the red collar. The first 2 slips had been of enormous length, but this time Gary Kelly just dropped him a fraction shorter. Glatton General, led by 2.5 lengths, burst down to slits, showing his trap pace. They met the hare lower down the field than usual and picked up after 13 seconds, Glatton General on the white collar being the winner. Next in slips we saw a fascinating course between Mousetail on the red and Fantasy World on the white. These two had met in the Hugh Peel at Altcar a year and a half before. Mousetail led then but checked, allowing Fantasy World to get up. This time Mousetail made no mistake. She led 4 lengths, and in a 26-second course there was no chance of reply. The 5th course saw Market Exchange on the red collar meet Fiantre Flair on the white. It was a tremendous run-up, and Fiantre Flair was just up. He'd run up for 2 Open Cups in Cork. Market Exchange won a 16 dog at East of England at Christmas. The course lasted only 29 seconds, and that fractional lead in a couple of turns was enough to see Fiantre Flair the winner. Next in slips was another tremendous run-up. My Bonnie Prince on the red, who'd won a Duffer stake at Waterford, met Singing Spider, who led 6 lengths in a final at Newmarket just before Christmas but been beaten. It was a tremendous run-up. The hare veered slightly one way and then the other, and that allowed My Bonnie Prince to be just up. With the hare racing forwards, as most of them do at the Withens, there was only 27 seconds work, and that was enough to see My Bonnie Prince the winner. Next in slips was a useful puppy, Hot Pot. He'd won the Huntingdon Derby and an all-age cup also at Huntingdon. He led by 1.5 lengths on the red collar, Auntie Margaret on the white, who'd failed to win a trial stake in Ireland, although she'd been placed a few times. Notice the enormous crowd that already assembled on the bank. Auntie Margaret did her best, but another racing hare gave her no chance of overturning the early deficit. Next we saw an Irishman, Curramore Lap, meet Kerry Model on the red, Kerry Model being an expatriate Irishman. Kerry Model had won the Champion Stakes purse at Newmarket before Christmas, and Curramore Lap's a well-bred dog who'd won an open stake at Westmeath. Kerry Model on the red led by 1/2 length, and this was the first long course of the day. 65 seconds work is to follow. The hare looked sure to go out at the top of the field in the traditional place. But with neither dog running particularly closely, the hare was allowed plenty of leeway. And she took them up and down in front of the Suff for 65 seconds work. This gave Curramore Lap every chance of retrieving the deficit, but Kerry Model kept sweeping in and did enough to get the flag. Two useful English dogs next met. 65 on the red collar had been the first bitch to win the Sefton Stakes in history. She met Earl Marshall on the white collar, who'd won the Swaffham Cup. It was sure to be tight. After a barging run-up, it was 65 who led Earl Marshall by 1/2 length. A 33-second course to the Suff at the top of the field was to follow. Next in slips was Country Daisy, the 6-to-1 favourite. You couldn't back her at the call over the previous night at the Scarry's Brick Hotel. Country Daisy on the red had won 3 cups in Ireland in the park, although she only weighs 52 pounds. She met Roundwood Ebony, who'd won the Huntingdon Oaks. Roundwood Ebony on the white was always in front, and to enormous cheers from the bookmakers, it was Roundwood Ebony who led by a length. There was 41 seconds work to follow, and Country Daisy was given every opportunity to overturn the lead if she could. But the two exchanged points, and it was a foregone conclusion that Roundwood Ebony on the white, who'd led by a length, would be the winner. The next pair saw Blackwater Swift, an Irish import who'd run up for the Champion Puppy Cup at Newmarket after winning a trial stake at Rathcormac. Blackwater Swift on the red met Lollipop on the white. Lollipop had run up for the Bedford House Stakes at Huntingdon. Blackwater Swift made no mistake and led 3.5 lengths. He'd not impressed everybody with his working abilities at Newmarket on very firm ground, but he coursed a lot tighter here and never gave Lollipop a chance of retrieving the balance. The course lasted 51 seconds. An extremely fast and agile hare was always in control. Next in slips was the big outsider, Coley. Running on the white collar, he'd been very lightly coursed at Newmarket and Swaffham. He met About Sober, whose form was almost as dark. About Sober was on the red collar, and Coley on the white. The hare coming wide on Gary Kelly's left, he allowed it plenty of time to straighten before releasing the dogs. And Coley burst away to lead by a length and a half. With the hare never running decisively, the end was short. and after 18 seconds, Coley pulled down to be a convincing winner. Next in slips was Wise Bimbo on the red. He'd won the Newmarket Galleries Cups at Newmarket, but he's always been bad in slips. And sooner or later in the collar had no form to speak of. Had a scrap in slips, and then sooner or later burst away clear, with Wise Bimbo making ground all the time. He couldn't quite get there. And sooner or later, just led. And as they failed to reach the hare until it was almost out at the top of the field, Wise Bimbo had no chance to change the result. The next pair saw two outsiders from England. Arabian Pershing on the red collar had been drawn from a semi-final at Cotswolds in December and met Bond on the white collar, who had no form to speak of. A typical Withens course followed, right to the top of the field, with 28 seconds work. Arabian Pershing having led 3 lengths, the result was clear. Even at the Withens, however, speed alone isn't always enough. And in the next course, Skipper's Jazz on the red collar, who'd shown plenty of pace when running up for the Caledonian Cup before Christmas, met Cassiopeia, who'd won the BFSS Stakes at Newmarket. Cassiopeia on the white is no flying machine, but she can work.
You're on the big fella.
Skipper's Jazz burst clear from slips and led an easy 2 lengths. But a course for the crowd was to follow. With Skipper's Jazz flashing by, Cassiopeia on the white collar was always turning the sharper. And to the delight of a now enormous crowd, things were starting to get interesting. The hare fainted as if she was going to go back into the beat whence she'd come, but then made up her mind to go out at the top of the field. She was never in the slightest danger, but she kept allowing Cassiopeia to get in and score the couple of points to Skipper's Jazz 1. By the time she eventually went out to the field, at the traditional route, Cassiopeia was a half-point winner according to the judge. The first half of the Waterloo Cup first round saw Secure Peter on the red collar meet Mona's Boy on the white. Secure Peter had been beaten at Alresford and had only coursed a couple of times. Mona's Boy had won the South of England Cup, although he was led in the final. Mona's Boy on the white collar burst clear, but then immediately went unsighted. Here he sees the hare and comes back online, but the red collar Secure Peter was 2 lengths in front when the hare was reached. In a 31-second course, that was decisive. By now the crowd was truly enormous. 11 coaches had come onto the field, and the police were having a severe worry as to whether or not the crowd could be catered for in the existing car parks. An additional field had been taken in this year to cope with the car parking facilities, but at one time it looked as if the cars would have to be parked on the road. The first half had now been completed in record time, before the biggest crowd for probably 25 years.
Very strong hares and long run-ups have been the order of the day down the first half of the card. The loudest cheer of all has been the bookmakers cheering the exit of 6-to-1 favourite, Poor Country Daisy, who was well led a length by Roundwood Ebony, and was never in the hunt. Glatton General has managed to run the shortest course of the round so far, and looks in a marvellous position. The lead has only been beaten once, when Cassiopeia managed to overturn the lead of Skipper's Jazz in a shorter than usual slip. But with the long slips that we're getting at the moment, the lead seems pretty safe from now until the bottom of the card.
There now promised to be an interesting course between High Wind on the red and Timworth Tom on the white. High Wind on the red collar had won a 16th upper stake at New Ross, and Timworth Tom the Fitzwilliam Stakes at Huntingdon. They were neck and neck. Timworth Tom clear, high wind gaining. High wind turned the hare first, and Timworth Tom picked up.
Yes. You have to.
The classic undecided. 0 and 0 or 1 and 1, whichever way you see it. Those dogs had to go back in slips after 2 courses to try again. Next came Moonlight Jess on the white and Come On Chris on the red. They changed sides in the run-up. Come On Chris on the red collar had been a fast dog, but age is catching up with him now. Moonlight Jess had been a fair club dog round the Yorkshire clubs. Moonlight Jess led by 3 lengths, but there was plenty of work to follow. Old Come On Chris was beginning to warm to his task, and the hare was giving him every chance. Although no distance from the escape, she changed her minds from going out at the top right-hand corner of the field to going out at the left-hand corner through the nominator's car park. Come On Chris could never quite get enough turns out of her. She was always going just too strong, and the lead proved again decisive. And Moonlight Jess on the white collar was the winner, having led 3 lengths. The next promised to be an interesting tussle between Spearmint on the red. She'd run up for the champion puppy in season 85-86, but had been out of form of late and had got beaten at Dullingham on her only run this season. She met Chroma Topaz on the white, who'd been winning all sorts of stakes round the Norfolk clubs. Chroma Topaz, however, showed that one in form often beats one out of form, and Chroma Topaz on the white collar led by a length and a half to beat Spearmint decisively in a 32-second course. There was now enormous excitement in the crowd for the rerun between High Wind on the red and Timworth Tom on the white. They'd had the undecided 2 courses earlier. There was a tremendous buzz of excitement running through the crowd as the hare appeared behind slipper Gary Kelly. Which dog would get his breath back the quicker? Once again, Timworth Tom was the fastest out of slips, and High Wind gradually began to close. But this time Timworth Tom drew clear again to lead by a couple of lengths. The hare, however, decided to be fair to both parties and stayed in the field long enough to give the crowd some real excitement. But Timworth Tom was a clear winner when the hare left at the bottom of the bank.
That hare's going like a shot now. Yes. He couldn't gallop a yard when he came on.
This second course lasted 59 seconds, and they had 14 seconds in their undecided.
Hare's still there.
At this moment, the demonstrators arrived from Liverpool. About 198 of them, according to the police. Heavily represented were the Liverpool anarchist group. They stayed and watched the coursing for about 20 minutes, but the sight of 8,000 coursing supporters proved intimidating, and they then left without causing any trouble. Next in slips was Major Share on the red collar, and Just Beyond on the white. Just Beyond had run very well in the Champion Puppy Stakes at Newmarket last year, but been lightly coursed this season. She led Major Share no less than 5 lengths. He'd been drawn from the final of the Swaffham Cup, but had been beaten subsequently at Alresford. This was a disappointing show by him.
Oh my goodness, how lovely.
Just Beyond's a ground worker, and having led 5 lengths in a 34-second course, there was no chance of reply. Unfortunately, there now follows a missed course, Alveston Donny met Bangle, and Alveston Donny led by 2 lengths on an inside. Alveston Donny had been drawn from the 3rd round of the Champion Puppy Stakes at Newmarket a month earlier, and Bangle had won at Huntingdon. They were a useful pair, and Alveston Donny impressed. Their course lasted 35 seconds. Next in slips was Cronin's Figure on the white collar, who was just up against Royal Mister on the red. These are 2 useful dogs. Cronin's Figure on the white had won the Cork Derby, and Royal Mister on the red had won the 32 Benroy Stakes at his owner's own meeting at North Links. Although the hare went back, the lead proved decisive, and Cronin's Figure, who was just up, shared the points to win a 54-second course. The hares had run particularly strongly so far and delighted an enormous crowd. The police estimated it over 7,000, but the gate figures made it nearer 8,000. The second favourite, Crafty Drive On, now was to meet Big Samson. Big Samson on the red collar is the biggest dog in the field. He weighs 100 pounds. He's got good pace, but had been hard run in both the Sefton and the Benroy. Crafty Drive On the far side appeared likely to be caught, but she sped by and drew clear to lead at the crucial first turn by a length and a half. They then pulled down in front of the crowd. Crafty Drive On is out to the fabulous little bitch, Little Shoe, and was the winner of this course. The next pair were G-Sharp in the red collar and Fairy King in the white. G-Sharp had good recent form, having won impressively at Huntingdon. Fairy King had been in good form in the autumn when he'd run up for the Sefton Trophy, but had shown little since. Once again, recent form proved decisive, and G-Sharp led by 2 lengths. A very strong hare was surprisingly killed. And extremely unluckily. The course ended after 39 seconds. There was an unusual occurrence in the next course, where Bristol Duffer on the white collar, who'd run up for the Toyota Stakes at Rath Keel, fell when several lengths clear of Seabell in the run-up. Seabell on the red collar had been only lightly coursed. The Withens is superbly prepared these days by George Rimmer, and there's really no excuse. Just bad luck. Seabell was now left with things very much her own way, and in a 46-second course, poor Bristol Duffer could never get back in. Seabell on the red collar was a convincing winner as the course was run. The next followed a real course for the crowd. Linton Missouri on the white collar, who had been running without a great deal of success in Yorkshire, met Allowdale Darkey on the red collar, who'd run up at Dramina. Not surprisingly, Allowdale Darkey was a hot favourite to win the course and led by 5 lengths. But the lead was overturned by half a point according to the judge, so this is a fascinating course to watch. Linton Missouri now virtually assumes control and keeps chipping away at those early points by the red collar. Hard though Allowdale Darkey tried, he could never really get in. And it was Linton Missouri who hunted the hare out to the bottom of the field and along the Cinder Road. Linton Missouri was the winner of this 53-second course. Next in slips was React Swank on the white collar, owned by the combination who won the previous Waterloo Cup run in 1985. who met Linton, Texas on the red, Linton, Texas being a litter brother to Linton, Missouri. Rhett Swank showed a superb park action when leading by a convincing 5 lengths. Pressing the hare hard, only 28 seconds coursing followed. Rhett Swank went into a lot of people's notebooks here. The next course saw Brandside on the red, an expensive ex-tracker, meet Juniper on the white. Juniper had run up to Carlton, although he'd led in the final in the Swaffham Manor Trophy at Newmarket in December. Unfortunately, Juniper on the white ran unsighted, allowing Brandside to take the early points. However, there was over a minute's coursing to follow, so Juniper had every chance of retrieving an unpromising situation. The hare looked sure to go out here, but she changed her mind, went along the ditch and popped up in front of the Popular Bank. To enormous cheers from the crowd, 72 seconds work followed. But Brandside plugged away and was the winner of the course. We were now down to the last 4 in the first round of the Waterloo Cup. Panther on the red collar was to meet Serene Master on the white collar. Panther had run up for the South of England Cup. He'd led in the final, but the ground was very firm and got outworked by Mona's Boy. Serene Master had been only lightly coursed, but was well bred. Panther on the red collar led by a length and a half, coming from behind. In an average 48 seconds Withins course, although Serene Master worked much the tighter of the pair, there wasn't quite enough time for him to outwork Panther's initial advantage, and the red collar Panther was the winner. The next pair were supposed to be Roger's sister and the much vaunted 1-7, who'd been so unluckily beaten in the Champion Stakes final. Unfortunately, 1-7's connections had failed to bring his papers with him, and he was disqualified by the slip steward. This allowed Roger's sister to run a bye. Roger's sister had won at Huntingdon, but had always been hard run in her courses in England. And she got no luck here either. She got a 79-second solo bye. She had all sorts of near misses, a couple of falls, a slight collision with a flanker, but a very strong hare which she'd pressed early on took her right the way back down the length of the field.
You know who's been qualified? My friend. Your friend from the council.
Next to be presented to the slipper was Royal Meningra on the red collar, who'd run up for the Altcar 1000 to Clapton General. He met Carlton on the white collar, a good working dog who'd won the Sutton Manor for the second time at Newmarket before gaining a lot of publicity when he was subsequently stolen. Carlton was retrieved eventually from Mitcham in South London. However, here he got led by 2.5 lengths by Royal Meningra in the red collar. Carlton's a great working dog, though, and he set about trying to retrieve the situation, as he has so often done in the past. Owned by flat race jockey Greville Starkey, he's given him some enormous pleasure, but a fall at the crucial stage gave him no chance of retrieving the situation in a course that lasted only 38 seconds. The first round of the Waterloo Cup was then concluded when Chagall on the red collar, who'd won a trial stake as a puppy and run up twice for cups in Ireland this season, and trained by Ger McKenna, met C. Holly, who'd been beaten in the Anglia Cup, who ran on the white collar. Chagall was a hot favourite and led by 4 lengths. The course was to last exactly a minute, but Chagall coursed tightly. And although C. Holly chased the hare to cover, there was never any doubt that the red collar, Chagall, would be the winner of the final course of the first round of the Waterloo Cup.
Well, this second half of the first round of the Waterloo Cup has certainly been sensational, not least for action off the field. 1 to 7, who must have had one of the best chances of the English dog, has been disqualified because his owners failed to turn up with his identity book. A dreadful shame and a terrible end to their attempt on the Cup. However, 2 of the Irish bitches, Crafty Drive On and React Swank, have impressed me enormously, particularly React Swank, which seemed to go up very fast indeed in her first course. Crafty Drive On looked as if she was just about to be swallowed up by the huge big Samson, but managed to pull out and gain a really meritorious lead. Still there also is the English dog Timworth Tom, who was just led in his undecided against high wind, and when they were brought back to slips a few minutes later, he seemed to be the tougher and pulled out to lead convincingly and win his course that time.
The second round of the Cup commenced with Milton Emu on the red, who'd been out for 22 seconds, meeting local suitor on the white, who'd been out for 30 seconds. Milton Emu came gradually from behind in a long run-up. The judge described them as equal pace, and in a 42-second course, it was therefore down to working ability. The red collar just coursed the tighter, and was always just in control of a tricky little hare that popped out through the traditional route at the top of the field. Milton Emu was the winner of this 42-second trial. There then followed the most controversial course of the meeting. In fact, it could have been said that the Waterloo Cup was decided here. Mousetail on the white collar had been out for 26 seconds and met the very fast Glatton General on the red collar, who'd been out for 13 seconds. Glatton General led to the first turn by a length, but as he swung round, there were several hares on the field and he disappears from view onto another hare. Mousetail continues to course on the original hare, and Judge Ronnie Mills followed her all the way to the bottom of the field, scoring her points. He pulled for the white collar Mousetail as the winner of this course, but there are several interpretations of the rules. Mousetail breaks off here, which cannot have endeared her to the judge. But he had no hesitation in pulling the white collar Mousetail. The third course of the second round saw My Bonnie Prince on the white collar lead Fiantre Flair by 5 lengths. These two were level on handicap. My Bonnie Prince had been out for 27 seconds and Fiantre Flair for 29. My Bonnie Prince picked up in his stride, led 5 lengths, and that was that. The next brace were Hot Pot on the red collar, who'd been out for 29 seconds, and Old Kerry Model, who'd had 65 seconds. Hot Pot on the red collar, not surprisingly, led by 2.5 lengths. But Kerry Model had had plenty in the first round in any case, and he was to get another 87 seconds work here. The hare was in no hesitation and went straight back whence she'd come. No doubt who was in control of this course throughout, the hare. Judge Ronnie Mills took advantage of a slight break in the proceedings to change horses rather precariously to the delight of the crowd, while 65 and Roundwood Ebony were taken to slipper Gary Kelly. 65 had been out for 33 seconds and was running on the red collar. Roundwood Ebony had been out for 41 seconds and was running on the white collar. 65 led by 1.5 lengths in this course, but there were those who thought that Roundwood Ebony on the white collar was unlucky to lose it, although the course lasts only 36 seconds. Roundwood Ebony was the first to show and stayed in front to lead by 1.5 lengths on an inside. She scores the next point and falls. .65 then drives the hare back down the field towards the sup at the bottom. .65 then falls, allowing Roundwood Ebony to finish the course. Judge Ronnie Mills, however, pulled for the red collar, .65. Next in slips was Coley. Little considered before the Cup. He was on the white collar. He'd only been out for 18 seconds and met Blackwater Swift, who'd been out for 51. This could have been an interesting course, but Blackwater Swift veers off to the right and is unsighted, allowing Coley to course on alone in the early stages of the course, which only lasted 30 seconds in any case. Coley on the white collar was the winner. If there was a prize for the fastest or certainly the quickest turning hare at the meeting, I think the next hare would get it. Sooner or later on, the red collar had been out for 25 seconds and met Arabian Pershing on the white, who'd been out for 28. They were level on handicap. In a good run-up, sooner or later led by a length. But the star of the show is the hare, who turns like greased lightning before they ever reach it, round again before they ever reach it, and back again before they ever see it. She just left herself a bit short of room here. There's a ditch just there. But going back, feinting left and then going right, she's away now and as safe as houses, and will live to be Methuselah. The course lasted 54 seconds. Sooner or later on, the red collar being the winner. The next pair were Cassiopeia on the red collar, who'd had a long 69-second course when overturning the lead, who met Secure Peter on the white collar, who'd only been out for 31 seconds. The bookmakers were wrong here, and Cassiopeia led by half a length. In a course of 59 seconds, Cassiopeia is not the type of dog to be outworked. Secure Peter did his best, but Cassiopeia on the red collar was an easy winner. This course brought us to the halfway stage of the second round of the Waterloo Cup. Well ahead of the clock, it had been a long time since hares have come forward more readily or run better. The large crowd who'd been standing early on had now settled down, tucking in on the bank to bacon butties and sandwiches. There was an icy wind blowing from behind the bank, and they were in the warmest spot. Next in slips was Timothy Tom on the red collar. He'd had 73 seconds coursing in 2 goes. He'd had an undecided. He met Moonlight Jess on the white collar, who'd been out for 71, so they were level on handicap. Timothy Tom drew steadily clear to lead by 3 lengths. And in a typical Withens course lasting only 36 seconds, that proved decisive. The next course brought together Just Beyond on the white collar, who'd been out for 34 seconds, and Chroma Topaz on the red collar, who'd been out for 32. Just Beyond was to lead by 2 lengths. The course took them up and down the popular bank, and if you look closely, one sporting gentleman who was selling bacon butties off to the crowd has set fire to the grass and is having quite a considerable battle to put his private fire out. Much to the amusement of his colleagues. These 2 bitches treated the crowd to a superb exhibition of coursing, and it shows how interested they are in the game when you hear the cheers and claps that greeted this hare as she popped away to safety. Alveston Donny had impressed lots of people in his first course. Here he is on the red collar, having been out for 35 seconds, meeting Cronin's Figure on the white collar, who'd been out for 54. Alveston Donny came from behind to lead convincingly by 2 lengths. He looked a real Withens dog. And in a course of 31 seconds, that proved decisive. Next in slips was Crafty Drive On, now sharing joint favouritism. She's on the red collar. She'd had only 20 seconds in her first round and met the genuine G Sharp on the white collar, who'd been out for 29. Irish pace shows here, however, and Crafty Drive On draws steadily clear to lead by 5 lengths. Meeting the hare well up the field, she got the ideal second round course, which lasted for 33 seconds. She looked well placed for Lydiate tomorrow. Most of the hares have been racing up the field strongly, which was a slipper's dream. But the next pair, Sea Belle on the red and Linton Missouri on the white, caught one of the rare turning hares. The hare, in fact, turned just before the dogs met her. Sea Belle on the red had been out for 46 seconds and led Linton Missouri by 3 lengths. Linton Missouri having been out for 53. A tricky little hare took them back down the field for 56 seconds work. The dogs swapped points, but Seabell was the winner.
Go back, isn't it? Yeah. Well, that plough, which is left there especially for them. And the hare squat.
Riat Swank on the red collar had impressed a great number of people in her first round. She'd been out for 28 seconds and met the hard-run Brandside on the white collar, who'd been out for 72. Not surprisingly, she led 6 lengths.
No. Go back, see what you can see.
She'd been accused in Ireland of not running on towards the end of her courses, in which case she did exactly what's wanted here. Cut the course short. After 28 seconds, Riat Swank on the red collar was the winner. She too looked well placed for tomorrow. Roger's sister had had a long bye, 79 seconds. She's on the white collar here, and Panther in the red collar had been out for 48 seconds and was just up in a close decision. However, there was almost a minute's coursing to follow, and Roger's sister worked much the closer and was the winner of the course despite having been led. Panther does his best. He's just not agile enough turning. Judge Ronnie Mills gallops on. Obviously the course is getting close now.
That's the beauty of it. Yeah. The reason this has become the premier coursing ground is because the peak is very soft. There's no stone.
But Roger's sister is the winner.
What's in there, Charlie?
The second round of the Waterloo Cup was then brought to a conclusion when Royal Meningra on the red collar, who'd been out for 38 seconds and is a fast dog, met Chagall on the white collar, who'd been out for 61 seconds. Chagall was always in front and led by a length and a half. He too went into a lot of people's notebooks here. After 43 seconds work, he was a clear winner.
Wasn't the same since you cut your hair off. No, still the need to stop and sort of. You weren't doing it.
Committee then decided to stick to their original plan and press on now with the Waterloo Purse. 16 courses were required, and these were run off in a record 1 hour's coursing. 16 courses in an hour, you can't do better than that. And first in was West End on the red collar. He'd been out for 22 seconds, and he met Spring Jupiter on the white collar, who'd been out for 30. West End led by 2 lengths. The hare turned sharply, a bit shorter than usual, and took them up and down the Popular Bank. And they had a minute's good coursing. First one, then the other scored some points. But a strong hare never gave them much chance to really knock the points up, and it was West End on the red collar who was the winner, having scored the initial points. The second pair in the Waterloo Purse, which is for dogs beaten in the first round of the Cup, were Fantasy World and Kazan's B.I. Kazan's B.I. was up from Cornwall and was completely unfancied at the call-over. Fantasy World's been a good dog, She won the Barbican Cup. She'd been out for 26 seconds and is on the white collar, and Kazan's Bi on the red collar had been out for 13. Kazan's Bi did well to hang on to her, but the judge gave Fantasy World a just-up decision.
Go on, Kazan! Come on,
They don't come closer than that. There was 78 seconds work, though, to follow. Both dogs fall at various junctures in the course.
Yeah. There's a ditch there. I bet they tripped on the edge of it. They're crossing it again now, you see.
Is the scoring system over?
No, no, he's still judging. Until you see him turn away, he'll still be judging. It's a very tricky course to
But
judge.
Fantasy World was the winner when the hare left the field. The white collar Fantasy World.
There haven't been very many points scored, so you'd be looking all the time. Still looking. Yeah, hare's still going up the side of the bank. No, she'll pop round the corner here. This one, of course, goes straight off. Round to the full, and you pull one.
Singing Spider had been withdrawn from the next course. This allowed Market Exchange on the red collar who'd been out for 29 seconds to run a bye. There are various schools of thoughts in running byes. Normally at Lydiate, a bye dog is always put in to assist, but at the Withens, particularly if you get a long slip, it's often best to let the dog go on his own. Market Exchange's connections decided to let him go on his own. He got a minute's coursing.
Yes, he's running what we call a bye. It's only been withdrawn, you see. But it has to run to even up the handicap.
Could be a disadvantage there if you end up going back.
Oh yes, you can get a fair old bit of quick.
Is this one changing?
Well, it's run it by itself, you see, and you hope that because it wouldn't press the hare so hard by itself, the hare will escape more quickly and measure off lightly. The distance they run, of course, in each course is actually critical as to how they do next time.
The hare was never in the remotest danger. Next came Auntie Margaret on the red collar, who'd been out for 29 seconds. She was opposed by Curramore Lap on the white collar, who'd been out for 65 seconds. Curramore Lap enjoyed the advantage of an inside and led by 1.5 lengths. But he scored all the points, including the closure. They got off with only 12 seconds.
They first came out of the Middle East.
Earl Marshall on the red collar then enjoyed a bye on the withdrawal of the previous favourite, Country Daisy. Earl Marshall on the red collar had been out for 33 seconds. Charlie Howard, his experienced trainer, decided to run a bye dog with him. Although this was only a bye, they treated this crowd to some nice coursing. The fast hare was always in control and deserved the cheers and claps of the crowd when she made her escape at the top of the field.
This is a bye, Tony, is it?
Yes, looks like a red. It's like running around in circles and something like that, you know.
The next pair were Lollipop on the red and a Bounce Sober on the white. Lollipop had been out for 51 seconds and does well to just lead a Bounce Sober in a just-up decision. pairs flecked twice and picked up. Lollipop on the red collar being the winner. The next pair were Wise Bimbo on the red and Bond on the white. Wise Bimbo this time doesn't involve himself in an unseemly scrap in slips, and as a result he leads Bond by some 5 lengths coming from behind.
On the inside to the what?
He's a fast but unruly dog. A 78-second trial gave Bond every chance of retrieving the situation, but Bill Beaton's dogs are seldom if ever beaten after the turn, and Wise Bimbo makes no mistake. Just gets in towards the end of the course to ensure himself of the decision. The next pair were Skipper's Jazz, who'd led in the previous round but been beaten after the turn, running on the red collar, having been out for 69 seconds. He met Pomona's Boy, who'd been out for 31 seconds in the first round and had run unsighted. Skipper's Jazz on the red collar leads by 3 lengths.
Can you lighten up?
Dogs swap points throughout the course. And with neither able to set up a course-winning sequence, the lead looks like being decisive. However, Bond, who had not been retrieved from her previous course, appeared into view to join the other two and lend them a helping hand. At this point, the judge always, according to the rules, stops scoring. A strong hair defeated all 3 of them, and the red collar, Skipper's Jazz, was the winner. High Wind on the red collar enjoyed a bye on the withdrawal of Come On Chris. His connections had decided to run him solo, and he got the worst sort of hare for a solo bye. Not a particularly strong hare, but a very jinky hare. A strong hare, of course, leaves the field in a short time, giving the dog an easy course. A weaker or jinky or indecisive hare gives them a much harder trial. And poor High Wind here gets everything. Turn after stamina-sapping turn. The hare never quite good enough to lead him. The course wore on for a minute, but the number of turns in this course would have done credit to a course of half a gain as long. It's a nightmare course for the connections to watch, but a crowd pleaser. The next pair were Spearmint on the red collar, who'd been out for 32 seconds. She met Major Share, who'd been out for 34 seconds. Spearmint on the red collar drew clear to lead by a length and a half. Once again, the hare decided to go back and gave the dogs plenty of work in a course lasting 52 seconds, in which Spearmint, who had led, was the winner. It's amazing how seldom dogs ever collide with anybody standing on the field. Despite having their eye on the ball, so to speak, they're always very observant of the other obstacles in the way. However, this is an interesting course. To the delight of the enormous crowd, the white collar Royal Mister, who leads Bangle on the red collar by half a length on an inside, collides with one of the flankers. Watch carefully. Both dog and flanker must have felt that. But Royal Mister got up and continued gamely with his course. His half-length lead was decisive, and he beat Bangle in a 48-second trial.
Yeah, he won't be doing very well either. Who? The dog or the man? No, the man. You ever had a dog on? Hang on, give me a minute. Yes, I will. I just finished.
Next in slips was the enormous Big Samson. On the near side, the red collar. He'd been out for 20 seconds in the first round, and he met Fairy King on the white collar, who'd been out for 29. Big Samson led by 2.5 lengths, but as so often in the past, he got more than was good for him.
Go on, Alan. I'm running
The
all
hare
the way.
went back and gave them 57 seconds work. It's noticeable in the Waterloo Cup how the later hares in the meeting tend to run back into the beat. This is, of course, because the earlier hares tend to come from the land above the field, whereas the later hares live more locally and adjacent to the field and tend to go back to where they live. It's an advantage often to be drawn at the top of the card in the Waterloo Cup. The next pair were to be Bristol Duffer and Allerdale Darkie. But Allerdale Darkie was withdrawn, allowing Bristol Duffer a bye. He'd been out for 46 seconds in the first round and had suffered that fall during the run-up. Running a solo bye, this time he got 41 seconds work. A little bit of Butterfingers came into play here. Which cost him another 20 seconds effort. Three courses now needed to be run to complete the first day's card. Linton, Texas on the red collar had been out for 28 seconds and met a tired Juniper on the white collar who'd been out for 72 seconds. Linton, Texas led by 5 lengths, and in a 33-second course, that was more than decisive. Penultimate course, Serene Master enjoyed a bye. Serene Master was running on the red collar. Bill Beaton elected to run him solo. A long slip saw the hare well up the field, and as a result, although he was on his own, he only got 42 seconds work. The first day's coursing was then concluded when Carlton on the red collar, who'd been out for 38 seconds, met C. Holly on the white collar, who'd been out for 61 seconds. Carlton led by 4 lengths, and as he's the best working dog in the country, there was little chance of Sea Holly reversing this. With Carlton doing the turning, Sea Holly swept in on an inside and just failed to pick up, but she was successful at her second attempt, allowing Carlton to do the work. She sweeps in, the worst combination for a hare, and Carlton on the red collar was a convincing winner as the points were scored.
After a marvellous day's coursing here at the Withens, where the card has been run out in record time in front of a huge crowd, we now have the two Irish bitches, Crafty Drive On and React Swank, as the most fancied runners left in the stake. Crafty Drive On is favourite at 3-1, not surprisingly after another tremendous course in the second round, and React Swank, who again went exceedingly fast, is next best at 5-1. They say that React Swank, who is in fact yet to win a stake in her native Ireland, will now start to fade, but it remains to be seen because he certainly galloped today. The English aren't having much luck. Poor old Glatton General, after convincingly leading Mousetail, has got on to a second hare. The judge continues to follow Mousetail, who was coursing the hare to which they had been originally presented, and she eventually managed to run up enough points to outscore him. But it was a very sad end to his challenge for this event.
Okay.
Jack Chadwick judged 22 Waterloo Cups. He died in 1982. Mrs. Chadwick kindly donated a trophy to be awarded annually to a person who has benefited coursing during the year. I have great pleasure in presenting the Jack Chadwick Memorial Trophy for 1987 to Sir Mark Prescott.
The Waterloo Cup. You've just seen the first day's coursing, and it was a great day's coursing too. And anyone who loves coursing, who loves the greyhound, with an interest in the hare, who loves stories of bookmakers and villains, anyone even with an interest in social history, can't afford to be without the Waterloo Cup, the first 150 years. Charles Blanning, who writes for nearly all the newspapers on coursing, and I have spent nearly 2 years researching this book. And it's a fascinating book. Endless interest in the text and some marvellous photographs, most of which have never been seen before. It can only be bought by subscription to this address that we're going to give you. And it's £21.95, and it's a bargain for anyone with an interest in the greyhound. Send off with a postal order or cheque for £21.95 to Heath House Press, 1 The Green, Wamston, Hampshire, SO21 3LR. That's Heath House Press, 1 The Green, Wamston, WONSTON, Hampshire, SO21 3LR. Now you must come to the Waterloo Cup in 1988. It takes place on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of March. There's going to be considerably improved prize money. The facilities have been completely renovated, and there's going to be extra coursing on the second day. Make sure you come along. We look forward to seeing you there.